Yes, both of these images were taken on this iPhone. So how can one look pro like this whilst the other one looks like that? Well, to be honest, there's no real secret, and you only have to change a couple of things. So watch until the end if you too want to shoot like a pro. Tip number 1, the rule of thirds. Basically gives you a little bit of a guideline on how to frame your shot. When shooting a portrait, for example, the eyes of the subject is almost always on the second line, because it's just the right balance of sky and torso to make a pleasing image. Landscape photos would be another example. As you can see in this frame, the line is right on my eyes and on the horizon, which in my opinion is giving me a pretty good looking frame. Next thing we have to do is change some settings on our phone. But because that's a little bit boring, I thought, why not do that inside of a seaplane? Okay, once you're in settings, you're gonna go into camera and turn on grid and level. Then go into formats and select most compatible. Under that should be photo mode, select 24 megapixels and turn on Pro RAW and resolution control. Go to preserve settings and turn on all of these. Now you're all set. The next important thing is the subject and the background. A lot of people assume that it's only about the subject that you're trying to capture. However, the background is just as important. Here are a couple of examples. This photo doesn't really pay attention to the background, so your eye doesn't really know where to look. Compared to this one, where you basically can't look away from the subject because every line in the image is forcing you to look in the middle, to look at the subject. Symmetry can also help your image. If you were to draw a line in this frame, or in the seaplane shot for example, you can see that both sides look very similar, making it easier for you to look at the video or the photo. This is one of my favorite photos because it combines everything I just talked about. You have the leading lines, you have the symmetry, and the rule of thirds, making for an almost perfect image. So when you're out shooting, make sure that you look for these leading lines. Look for straight lines, look for symmetry, look for lines that go to your subject. This is actually one of the most important points, so remember that next time when you're out shooting. Let's talk about exposure. In this image there are bright parts and dark parts, and it's my job, or your job, to make sure that both are well exposed. The highlights shouldn't be overexposed so they are blown out, and the darker parts shouldn't be so underexposed that you lose the information. A good rule for the iPhone is to expose for the sky. As long as the sky is exposed correctly, the rest of the image, most of the time, is good as well. Let's talk about the last step, which is editing. The best editing app for iPhone, in my opinion, is Lightroom. Let me take you through my editing process real quick. So, I usually start off with adjusting the highlights and the shadows. Then get into the contrast. Go over to color temperature and give the saturation a little boost. About 80% of the time I also add a vignette, just because it kind of makes the subject stand out a little bit more, and also add some sharpness if needed. And if the image is a little bit too green or too pink, I adjust the tint accordingly. At the end, I go over all of the settings again and keep tweaking until I like the final result. Time for export, so the photo is back in my Photos app, and this is the final result. In the last video I did actually hit 100 subscribers, so thank you very much. But we ain't done yet, so keep subscribing. If you do enjoy the content, let's continue. So you want to shoot RAW, because you have way more information in this image than a JPEG. These are the exact same settings applied to RAW and applied to JPEG, and you can see the difference is quite big. This RAW file might as well have been taken by a real camera. So here's a quick recap on how to take pro photos with your iPhone. So in the beginning we looked at portraits and how the eyes usually are on that second line, and how that makes the perfect mix between sky and torso. Then we looked at the settings on how to get the best photos, and afterwards at the subject and the background and why both of them are important. The next step was exposing an image correctly, which I hope you now understand better as well. And lastly, how to edit a photo from start to finish. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something in this video and you can shoot like the pros now with your iPhone. And I'll see you in the next one.